Hi, you're watching Dog Your Musings, and I'm Monica, and today I'm doing a book review of Rita Bullwinkel's debut novel, Headshot. Now, Rita Bullwinkel has been writing for a while, specifically editing for the McSweeney's Quarterly. She draws a lot of her themes from her ideas of the weirdness of the human body and all of the things that human bodies do. And specifically, Rita Bullwinkel used to compete in water polo.
If they score a goal, then it's this team's ball. They swim over here and try to score a goal. Pretty self-explanatory.
When she was in high school, which she kind of talks about as a huge influence in her life. And this was a huge influence to the novel Headshot. She talks about this one moment where she was watching YouTube videos of professional boxers fighting, training, and she felt this immediate connection to her water polo days and the training that she did there. And that was like a huge inspiration for writing this book. So what is the synopsis of Headshot? So Headshot follows this group of women who are all in this juvenile boxing competition. Now, we are kind of watching as each group of women fights and loses or wins, and we follow it to the ultimate end of the competition in this kind of nail-biting novel. And you don't necessarily need to like sports in order to enjoy this novel. This book follows the inner psyche of each of these unique competitors, why they were brought to the competition in the first place, their family dynamics, and just who they are and what brought them there. And it's a really interesting character study into the world of sports, specifically from the lens of female fighting. Again, another biased review, but I really enjoyed this book. But I'm going to talk about one aspect of this book that might draw you out of this book, depending on what your style of writing is. Now, if you are not a fan of flowery literary language, then you will enjoy Headshot. Headshot's writing is sparse, it is punchy, no pun intended, and it is to the point. Now, again, I think this is done with a purpose. I think that Bullwinkel does this for a reason, in order to mimic the fighting styles that we are watching or we're reading. But her formatting and how she writes, it feels like you are watching this fight. And I guess that brings us to the pros of Bullwinkel's writing itself. Now, this formatting, I feel like I've been reading a lot of books lately that just break the mold of what novel writing is. And maybe that's the theme of 2024 in publishing, or maybe that's just what I've been drawn to and picking up. But I feel like a lot of these writers are just really playing with the novel structure, and not just in sort of the lens of lit fic, but also kind of breaking the mold of what a novel kind of looks like and what formatting looks like to begin with. So what does Bullwinkel do that's different? So her characters kind of go back and forth in time. You're kind of brought to the present, the mindset of the competitor and what they're thinking and feeling when they're in the ring. But we also go forward decades in time, where we see this young woman as an elderly woman kind of thinking about her time in the ring. And we also go back in time to moments that happened months or years ago that were pivotal in why the young woman kind of ended up in the ring in the first place. And this mimics the back and forth rhythm that comes from a fight. And this format is also seen in the perspectives that we find ourselves bouncing back and forth from as well. Each paragraph is split from each perspective of the fighter who is in the ring at the moment. So not only are we bouncing back and forth in time, and we're also bouncing back and forth from perspective. And this is done in a way that doesn't feel gimmicky. This is done in a way that feels really interesting and new. And I think that Bullwinkle is able to succeed in this novel because it is under 300 pages. I believe it's like 150, almost, I think, if not 200 pages. It's a pretty short novel. So I think that she's able to play with the style in a kind of shortened way that gets the point across, is done so in a fun way, but also doesn't mess with your brain too much that you're exhausted by the end. Because even though you're watching a fight, you don't feel like you yourself have been beaten over the head by the writing style by the end of it. This is ultimately just a really exciting and innovative experience, at least that I had with this book. And so I'm excited to see Bullwinkle's next novels that she comes out with. Now, what are some read-alikes that I would recommend if you also enjoyed reading Headshot, or if you like these books, you might like Headshot? So the first book that came to mind was Diz Tate's Brutes. Now, I thought of this book again for its unique narrative style. Now, rather than kind of bouncing back and forth from narrative voice from paragraph to paragraph, Brutes has a unique narrative style in that it is kind of written in a choral voice. The whole novel is written from the perspective of we. It's written in choral style, and again, it kind of follows a similar narrative theme in focusing on a young group of women in kind of a tough and uncomfortable situation and a moment in time that molds their psyche. In Brutes, it is their experience living in this one neighborhood in Florida and kind of how the drive for success and fame and competitiveness of this town kind of shapes this group of young women and kind of their hopes to escape this town. Now, another book that I found to have kind of similar themes in my head was The Swimmers. Now, this book is also interesting and unique in its narrative style. The Swimmers is also a short book. It's split into 3 parts that each has its own unique, distinct narrative voice. The first book, again, speaking from a choral we style. Another section is written from, I forget each of the breakups of Swimmers, but each is written from its own narrative, different narrative perspective. But The Swimmers is really interesting in that it talks about our characters and the neighborhood's connection to their daily routines, specifically when it is connected to their neighborhood pool. Now, this book also connects with the aspect of aging and the aspects of routine and dementia, and kind of how someone's aging process affects family and loved ones, and how it affects the self as well. And it's told in a way that is, again, unique and beautiful, and also just very smart and thoughtful. Now, what were my takeaways from reading Headshot? I think what I really loved about Headshot was this idea of the aspect of time. How one moment in time or one event in time can really be monumental, but it also can be kind of inconsequential depending on the perspective of who is in, whose perspective you are kind of in. I just really loved how Bullwinkle really kind of skyrocketed us from perspectives and time in a way that just felt very fluid, and it just felt very like rhythmic and fluid. It felt like, again, I know I keep saying this, but just like the perfect flow state like how someone would want to be when they are in a boxing match. I'm excited to see what other novels Bullwinkle puts forward. This has been it for Dog-Eared Musings. Tune in next week. I'm Monica. Happy reading.